Hey guys, so let's say you got invited to a jam session with a few other musicians and you want to attend and not make a fool of yourself. What do you do? Well, I've got a separate video on the minimum requirements to play jazz piano where I list the minimum number of techniques that I think you should know when playing a song. So go check out that video if you like. Now in this video, I'm just hoping to say a few more generic things about how to prepare for a jam session and how to play in a jam session. So obviously the first thing you need to get is a list of the repertoire you'll be playing at the jam session so that you can learn the songs and memorize them and just have them absolutely in your finger memory by the time you actually go to the session. Now, as the piano player, you're in charge of playing the chords, though naturally you'll also get a chance to solo. You'll also be in charge of the bass line if there is no bass player. Now, very broadly, there are three registers in music: lower, middle, and upper, or bass, tenor, alto, soprano. And to get a full and dense and interesting sound, the band really needs to cover all three of these registers. Now, piano has the great advantage of having quite a large range, so is able to cover all three registers rather well. Now, this makes it very versatile in a group setting. As the pianist, you essentially just need to fill the gaps. So if you're playing with a double bass, stick to the middle and upper register. If you're playing with a soprano vocalist, stick to the lower and middle register. Or if you're playing with a guitar and a tenor sax, then play a walking bass line in the lower register and a couple fills in the upper register. Right? Fill in the gaps. So very generally, you should be able to play any combination of these registers. So for example, a walking bass line plus a harmony or plus fills, a walking bass line plus the melody, the harmony plus the melody, or the harmony plus upper structures and fills, or a walking bass line and really high fills. Now, apart from learning the repertoire and filling in the gaps, there are two other requirements for a successful jam session. One of them is listen to the other band members and respond. Right? It's all about contrast by either mimicking the other band members or playing the opposite of the other band members. So for example, if the soloist starts playing high, you start playing low. If the soloist starts playing softly, you can also play softly. If the soloist plays a particular phrase, repeat it or mimic it as a kind of call and response. Right, the whole point of playing in a band setting rather than just to a backing track is to be able to respond to each other and to, feed off each other and have like a bit of a conversation back and forth with the other band members in such a way that you can't really have with a backing track. And finally, have some fun. Do some weird or unusual stuff just to see what happens. For example, if you're comping for the soloist, you could just stop playing for a few bars and see what happens, and see how the soloist responds. Right, that could be interesting or exciting, and it feeds this whole two-way dynamic or conversation of the band. Another thing you can do is, instead of playing the chords exactly as written, you can put in some of your own reharmonizations, and the soloist should really hear that reharmonization that you've put in and maybe change the scale or add a couple passing notes to fit in with your reharmonized chords. Or taking this even further, you could just play something weird and unusual and leave the chord progression completely and just play some chromatic descending chords for a bit. Right, that little chromatic bit in the middle isn't part of the written out chord progression. I've just completely left the chord progression and just started playing random things, again, just to try and see what the soloist does, see how he responds to my interesting little chromatic motion, before going straight back into the form, into the chord progression. Now, doing these things obviously requires you to know the form of the song and the chords of the song really, really well, so you don't get completely lost with your little chromatic runs or silences or, you know, other weird things leaving the chord progression that you can do. You want to still be able to know exactly where in the song you are and slip right back into it whenever you want to. And similarly, when you're soloing, do a couple interesting things. Maybe quote a few songs, play like When the Saints Go Marching In over some other completely unrelated song. Or play the melody in the bass and see what happens. Is the bass player going to stop playing because he's realized, oh crap, I'm getting in the way of the melody that the piano's playing all the way down here? Or is he going to not listen to you at all, disregard what you're doing and continue playing his walking bass line? Or even better, is he going to go as high as he can on the bass and maybe play in sort of this middle register? Again, to get out of the way of you playing in the lower register. And there's a million other things you can do, right? You can displace the melody or play different fragments of the melody in different parts of the songs, right? There's literally a million things you can do. But your goal in a jam session is almost to try and throw the other people off their game and make them stuff up and make them really confused about what you're doing. So just do some weird stuff and see how they respond. Right, that's the difference between and half the fun of playing in a jazz band as opposed to an orchestra. You can just make stuff up and no one is going to chastise you for playing the wrong note. Right, playing jazz is all about spontaneity and making mistakes. You can't have one without the other, and you can't have jazz without both. So yes, learn the chords, learn the melody, be able to play every song absolutely perfectly, but then completely disregard that and do some weird stuff yourself, just cause that's what jazz is all about. Cool, thanks guys, see ya.